In 1787, the United States was essentially a startup. It consisted of 13 farming states hugging the Atlantic coast, holding a total population of fewer than 4 million people. Compare that to today. The country operates as a complex network of 50 states and vast geographical differences, and a massive modern economy supporting over 300 million people. Yet, to govern this massively scaled society, we are still using the exact same foundational document drafted by those 18th century farmers, the Constitution. A static piece of paper cannot survive centuries of aggressive economic and geographic change on its own. To avoid collapsing under the weight of new realities, a system requires a mechanism to continuously adapt. It is easy to assume the Constitution survives because lawmakers are constantly rewriting it to patch modern problems as they arise. Looking at this funnel of historical data, the math tells a very different story. Over 2 centuries, lawmakers have proposed more than 11,000 amendments at the top, but only 27 have survived the drop to become part of the actual document. For instance, after the Supreme Court ruled in 1989 that burning the American flag was protected speech, lawmakers immediately drafted an amendment to ban flag desecration. It failed, and despite repeated attempts since, it has never passed. The document owes its survival to a specific design choice, a dual-speed update system. One mechanism is deliberately grueling to execute, while the other is surprisingly fluid. The grueling mechanism is found in Article 5. It outlines a strict 2-step process for a hard update to the text, proposing an amendment and then ratifying it. As this flowchart shows, a proposal must clear a steep mathematical hurdle. You need a 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate just to start the process, followed by approval from 3/4 of the state legislatures to lock it in. The first batch of hard updates was demanded by leaders refusing to support the Constitution without written guarantees against government overreach. Ratified in 1791, these 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, laid out explicit liberties like freedom of speech, religion, and protection from unreasonable searches. Because this process requires such overwhelming national consensus, the formal amendment mechanism is essentially reserved for permanent, non-negotiable limits on government power. The few amendments that have cleared this high bar generally fall into 3 categories: extending individual rights, altering government structure, and expanding government power. The clearest examples of extending rights are the Civil War amendments, which abolished slavery and guaranteed equal protection under the law, and the 19th Amendment, which secured women the right to vote in state and national elections. Structural corrections usually happen when the system hits a stress test. After Franklin D. Roosevelt won 4 consecutive presidential elections, the 22nd Amendment was ratified to formally limit all future presidents to 2 terms. This high-friction system sometimes codifies errors. The 18th Amendment banned alcohol nationwide, creating a massive enforcement failure that it took a whole new amendment, the 21st, to repeal it 14 years later. Demanding an undeniable majority filters out impulsive changes. That is why this process has only succeeded 17 times since the original Bill of Rights. Waiting to build a supermajority across state lines every time society encounters a new technological or social dilemma is impossible. This is where judicial review steps in as the system's flexible engine. The Supreme Court has the power to take the general language written by the founders and interpret how it applies to modern, previously unimaginable realities. This mechanism is powerful enough that the courts can completely reverse their own understanding of the exact same text over time. In 1896, the court ruled segregated facilities were constitutional under the doctrine of separate but equal. Nearly 60 years later, in Brown v. Bourne Education, a new court reversed that stance, declaring separate facilities inherently unequal, all without editing a single comma in the Constitution. Presidents also run flexible updates. Modern administrations regularly bypass the formal treaty process outlined in Article 2, opting to conduct foreign affairs through executive agreements instead. These informal actions and judicial interpretations function as soft updates. They allow the government to easily navigate everyday complexities, keeping the framework alive and functional without triggering a formal rewrite. We govern a hyper-connected digital society, using rules drafted by candlelight. Applying those rules to modern issues creates continuous tension. The Second Amendment's brief mention of a well-regulated militia and the right to bear arms remains highly debated. It was a soft update in 2008, the District of Columbia v. Heller case, that firmly interpreted this as an individual right to use handguns for home defense. When a court hands down a highly controversial ruling, the public reaction is often immediate. Citizens who disagree with a soft update will instantly demand a hard update to override the judges. The framers could not predict the invention of the internet, airplanes, or modern firearms. Instead, they built an operating system with two speeds, one rigid enough to block tyrannical impulses, and another flexible enough to let future generations find their own answers.